guys, this is Blake with the Three Hand Hunter channel, and I want to welcome you back, and I want to thank you for tuning in. The watch you see here is the Precista PRS17a, the automatic version of a very special watch. What makes this watch so special is that it was only issued for a couple of years in 1988 and 1989 to the British Royal Navy. The other reason why it's so special is this watch came from a local friend who's also known as Bob. He's a watch enthusiast. And Bob knew that I had an affinity for Precista watches. So when he put this one up for sale, he came to me first. But let's talk a little bit about Precista watches, more specifically Eddie Platt's of Time Factors. In the past, I've reviewed two Precista watches, both from Eddie. Eddie, from my understanding, revived the brand in the early 2000s by registering the name Precista. But Precista watches were British watches and stopwatches made in the UK, and I think it was by a company called Southern Watch and Clock Supplies Limited for many years prior to that. Some watches with the brand name Precista were also issued to the British military and some even to the RAF. But watches like the Precista 17a and also this Precista 18a and this Precista 82 were also releases of those original designs actually issued to the British Royal Navy. A couple of years ago, I reviewed the PRS82, and it is my favorite tool watch, even to this day. You can find the review right here. And Eddie emailed me at one point and posted that video to his Facebook group. Eddie also owns the brand Smiths, and many of you are probably more familiar with those in recent years. He's done a lot of homages to different watches and also some original designs. And to be frank, there's a lot of feedback about Time Factors over the years. Mostly it's good, but also some not so good as well. Personally, I've never had an opportunity to buy directly from him because his shop usually opens one day a month or so, and it's so early in the morning in the United States on Sunday mornings that I've never been able to wake up on time. But I'll tell you this, based on my experience in the Precistas I've owned over the years, the workmanship that he's produced has been awesome. I urge you to take a look at some of his offerings when you get a chance. I always like to throw this out there. I'm just an enthusiast. I'm not a watch professional. Please jump into the comments down below and let me know what your experiences have been with Time Factors, Precista, or Smiths. I'm sure other watch enthusiasts would love to hear from you as well. And while you're at it, give me a like and give me a subscribe, especially if you like to see watches that might be a little different from other YouTube channels that you might watch. I'd appreciate it. Definitely helps me grow this channel. In 2006, Eddie of Time Factors offered the PRS 17 and 18 up for sale. Like I mentioned, both PRS 17 and 18s were British Royal Navy issued originally. And in 2006, he re-released an automatic and quartz versions of these watches. The PRS 17 was also offered in a chronograph, which was also quartz. The PRS 18 was released not as a limited production, but the PRS 17 that you see here was released with 100 quartz versions, 100 automatic versions, and 150 chronograph versions. Eddie also confirmed that neither quartz or automatic versions will ever be produced again. Over the last several years, many companies have started producing limited edition watches. Time Factors have been doing it for many years before, and they are really true limited editions. Very small batches were ever released. And as you can see on my wrist, I'm wearing a Precista PRS11 Broad Arrow. There are only 25 of these ever produced. Yeah, you heard that correctly, only 25. So in the years ahead, I think watches like these will be very valuable and quite sought after since they were limited before limited editions were even cool to be limited editions. But let's take a look at the dimensions of this watch. This watch comes in around 38.5 millimeters with its case diameter. But because the bezel and the dial sit inside of the case, and because of that it wears a little smaller, the lug to lug is about 45 millimeters and there's a 20 millimeter lug width. The thickness of the watch is just over 11 millimeters with an automatic ETA 2824 movement. I mean, why can't brands do that nowadays? I mean, hello? Anyone? Can you make a thinner watch? But let's take a look at the dial. You'll notice that applied dial markers resemble that of a vintage Omega Seamaster 300. The triangles at the 12, 3, 6, and 9, they harken back to those Seamasters to me. The rest of the indices are your normal diver rectangles. The font on the numerals also remind me of an old vintage Seamaster as well. One of the things that you'll notice on the old version or the original version of the PRS17 is that it had a T on the dial for tritium. The Eddie Platts version or the Time Factors version, the one that I have, has an L on the dial for luminous. The hands are fence post hands, but the white hands over a black dial is very legible, especially in low light conditions. Although the lume is nearly 20 years old, it still holds a decent charge. The thinness of this watch means that the chapter ring is very thin, or as a lot of watch enthusiasts like to call it, the rehout. Going back to the case, the biggest issue I have is this polished bezel. It's a 60-click unidirectional bezel, but since it's so thin, it is kind of hard to turn. The rest of the case is brushed stainless steel, and with the drilled lug holes, it's really easy to swap out the straps. Do you notice the flat area between the lugs? Even though I don't wear this with a bracelet, I've noticed that pictures of people that do wear it with a bracelet because of the flat end links. It's nice since so many watches do have curved lug openings. It's nice to actually have flat ones. The case was made by a company in Germany called Fricker. Based on my research, this company went out of business in the mid-2000s. However, this case was used by other companies to produce quartz divers. Most notable was the Sin 815 or the Tutama 515. Other companies like Rotary and Bouchot also use this case. I'm sure there are others, but it's becoming increasingly rare to find watches with this specific case made by Frickers. As you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this watch wears very comfortable. A lot of forums called this watch a dress diver in years past, but in today's market, it's increasingly popular to have sub 40mm dive watches. So you could say this design was ahead of its time. More importantly, considering I am prior military and as an infantryman who wore my watches in the field, it's a watch that could be unintrusive to wear, but also very useful for field operations. Here's the Precista 17A next to a couple familiar divers. Here's the PRS17 next to a Marathon GSAR. And here's the PRS17 next to an SKX 007. As you can see, the Precista PRS17A is an amazing little diver. But like I mentioned, these are getting increasingly difficult to find. You may want to be on the lookout for this case design, but open up your searches to other brands like Sin or Tutama or one of the others. If you can find one now, buy it while you can, because I expect these to be harder to find as years go on. Well guys, if you made it this far, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Blake. I'm a bit of a watchaholic. And if you made it this far, I'm going to assume you are one too. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll see you in the next video.